Yuma, 2021 is the year that COVID-19 struck back, with Canberra being sent into its second lockdown between the 13th of August and the 15th of October 2021. Due to the lockdowns, I had to be a little bit more local with my episodes this year, so please enjoy 2021 series of the Canberra series.
These majestic creatures of the sky were born from the creative mind of Patricia Piccini. Piccini was born in Freetown, Sierra Leone in 1965. She moved to Canberra in 1972 at 7 years of age, and in 1988, Piccini moved to Melbourne to pursue painting at the Victorian College of the Arts, graduating in 1991. Piccini became known for highlighting biotechnology and humanity's relationship with nature. Early on in her career, she would visit medical museums to draw preserved specimens, with aberrations and pathologies influencing her work. Piccini's artwork started with drawings before working with a team of technicians to bring her creations to life, often using silicone, leather, and human hair to make hyper-realistic creatures that challenge the viewer to inspect their relationship with nature. Piccini became involved with the ACT government in 2010, when Robin Archer, the creative director of the Centenary celebrations, commissioned Piccini to create a hot air balloon for the Canberra Centenary in 2013. With few limitations set by the ACT government, Piccini set out to create a balloon that didn't look like a thing, but was sculpted to be a living creature. The scale of the balloon meant that the creature would have to be a whale or dinosaur. The whale concept was chosen due to Piccini's fascinations with whales and their evolutionary journey from small-hoofed cat-sized creatures to the largest living organism in Earth's history. The sky whale is the result of Piccini exploring the idea of whales evolving to life in the air instead of the ocean. Technical limitations meant that wings couldn't be part of the design. Taking cues from hot air balloons, she imagined the sky whale secreted lighter-than-air gas that was stored in large udders and in their bulbous bodies. From here, she designed the creature with a calm and benign face that would inspire empathy and not fear, creating a being that was massive and wondrous, existing between the impossible and unlikely. Once a form was agreed on, Piccini and her team set to work on creating a 3D model with a CAD program. It was here she added further detail and was able to assess what the creatures would look like from an observer's perspective or from a distance. With a 3D model in hand, the design was sent off to Cameron Balloons in Bristol, the UK. Using their own design systems, they worked collaboratively to tweak the design until it was perfect for construction. The colours, patterns and textures of the design were then transferred to 3,535 metres of fabric, culminating in approximately 3.3 million stitches sewn by 6 people. All up, the process took over 7 months to complete and spanned the globe. The sky whale cost $172,000 to create, with $50,000 coming from the R&A Foundation. However, the cost of the entire project came to $350,000. This was to pay for the production of the sky whale, flights, upkeep, and licensing of the sky whale. The sky whale made her first public appearance on the 11th of May 2013. Piccini was a passenger on the maiden flight from the National Gallery to the National Museum of Australia, and during the flight, some of the stitches came loose, which meant that the sky whale had to return to Bristol for repairs. Since then, the sky whale has flown all over the world, from Japan to Ireland and Brazil. But she has not been free of controversy. Jeremy Hansen, the ACT opposition leader in 2013, felt the $300,000 price tag was too expensive for something that the ACT wouldn't own and was not symbolic of Canberra. Piccini has gone on to say, "A lot of people bring baggage to the work, and I can't help that. Once I make the work, it goes out there. People respond to it in whatever way they want. And often it's to do with their own ideas about nurturing, maternity, breasts, and breastfeeding."
The sky whale has been described as a giant turtle with breasts, terrifyingly nipply, and my personal favourite, the hidden boob.
In 2019, the sky whale was anonymously donated to the National Gallery of Australia, a month before Piccini announced the NGA, with assistance from the Balnaves Foundation, had commissioned another sky whale. In response to the underrepresentation of women in the National Gallery's collection, with only 25% of the collection being created by women, the director of the NGA, Nick Mitsovich, created the Know My Name Australian Women Artists 1900 to Now exhibition. The commissioning of the Skywhale Papa is part of this exhibition. Skywhale Papa was meant to fly in March 2020, but the COVID-19 pandemic postponed plans until February 2021. Skywhale Papa is a statement on masculinity and how it can be a nurturing force. He also answers the question of where the Skywhales' children are. They're being looked after by Dad. Pacini hopes this will show that caring is not gendered and that it is available to all of us. Skywhale Papa is made up of 2,342 1.5 metre panels, which equate to 3.5 kilometres of fabric, sewn together with 3.3 million stitches and stands at 30 metres tall, while carrying 9 of the offspring. He has a more vertical design compared to the Skywhale, who is 34 metres long and has 10 breasts. It takes 40 minutes for them to inflate with 4.5 tonnes of air. This may sound like a lot, but blue whales can weigh up to 173 tonnes. The Skywhales have gone on to influence both music and baking. Canberra artist Jess Green, aka Fino, worked with Pacini to create a mini-pop opera about the Skywhales, to be played as Skywhale Papa took his first public flight. Here, have a listen. Three Mills Bakery were also approached by Pacini to create a baked delicacy inspired by the Skywhales. The only requirements, to be nutritious and to evoke the maternal nature of the Skywhale. Three Mills decided to create a conical purple wheat croissant, inspired by the Skywhale's breasts, which was filled with honey milk custard to represent the comfort of warm milk as a kid, and plum jam. Finally, they were topped with freeze-dried raspberries and puffed amaranth meringue. I was lucky enough to have one and found that the purple wheat gave the croissant the texture of whole grain sourdough, as opposed to light and fluffy texture of regular croissants. Skywhale and Skywhale Papa will fly in Canberra on the 8th of March and the 3rd of April 2021 before touring the country for the next 2 years.
The Skywhales started off as a project for the centenary of Canberra, but have gone on to become pop icons. And now as a family they will grace our skies for years to come. If you've enjoyed this video, feel free to like, comment and share. And if you want to see more, hit that subscribe button. When the Canberra site was chosen in 1908, there was very little protection from the strong winds, primarily because of clearing of vegetation for farming. The wind was such an issue that it influenced the initial development of the city, with Kingston being built south of the proposed lake. However, by the 1920s, the inner north was also taking shape, and it was recognised that they too needed protection from the wind. In comes the man responsible for Canberra's tree-lined streets, Charles Weston, who created the east-west shelter belt, which would later go on to be known as Haig Park. Weston was the superintendent of Parks and Gardens in 1921 and was an experienced horticulturalist. He first moved to Canberra in 1913 to oversee the afforestation of Canberra. He initially started a nursery in Acton and Yarralumla to find indigenous and exotic plants suitable for the Canberra climate. He also worked with Griffin, but would often have disagreements over which plants to use. By the time the windbreak was needed, Weston knew which trees would be suitable for such a purpose. Weston oversaw the planting of 7,000 trees in 14 rows on a stretch of land that was 1.7 kilometres long and 143 metres wide. Weston chose Argyle apple, snow gum, pin oak, Roman cypress, Deedor cedar and Monterey pine, as well as desert ash. Of the 7,000 trees planted, 2,000 of them were Monterey pine. With the Great War still fresh in Weston's mind, he may have chosen the Roman cypress to pay tribute to the Australians who had fallen in battle. The Roman cypress is traditionally associated with death and immortality. Reflecting how much Australia still saw itself as an outpost of Britain, the east-west shelter belt was renamed Haig Park in 1928 after Earl Douglas Haig, who was the Commander-in-Chief of British forces during World War I. Haig became a career officer in the British Army in 1886. He served in India, Egypt, South Africa and Sudan. He rose up the ranks, becoming Major General in 1906. At 54, he took over the command of the British Army in December 1915. Though experienced, he struggled with the attrition of trench warfare. This has led some people to criticise his ability to lead. He oversaw the bloody battles of the Somme and Passchendaele. He survived the war, but died of a heart attack on the 28th of January 1928 at the age of 66. In 1982, Haig Park was heritage listed, safeguarding it for future generations. And in 1987, 66 years after the first trees were planted, it was designated a public park. This is rather unique, as most windbreaks aren't used for recreational purposes in Australia. Where the City to Gungahlin light rail route intersects with Haig Park is the only section of the route that has turf and not native grasses. In 1984, a regeneration program was implemented to replace most of the Monterey pine. The diversity of trees in Haig Park means it's easy to replace them when they're sick, aging or dead, without impacting the functionality of the windbreak. Over the years, Haig Park gained a reputation of being unsafe. It became a place to commute through for work, quickly walk your dog, and to avoid at night. In 2017, the City Renewal Authority stepped up to improve the park's reputation and to increase visitation. New paths and lighting were installed, and to entice crowds, events such as pop-up wine bars and art installations were held. With the reputation of park improving, farmers markets began to take place on Sundays in early 2021. On the 2nd of June 2020, signage explaining Haig Park's connection to country was officially unveiled with a smoking ceremony. The most prominent sign sits at the end of Lonsdale Street. Today, Haig Park is home to only 2,300 trees, with most, if not all of the original plantings replaced over the decades. Thanks to the City Renewal Authority, inner North Canberrans feel safer and more connected to the park. No longer just the east-west shelter belt, Haig Park is becoming a community hub for the vastly growing inner north, and it will continue to be a legacy of Charles Weston's bush capital. If you've enjoyed this video, feel free to like, comment and share, and if you want to see more, hit that subscribe button. Canberrans have been using public transport since 1923, with the first bus shelters being mostly made of wood. Their floors were often wood, tiled, or made of concrete, depending on their location and the availability of resources. Today, only 12 now exist. In the 1920s, the bus routes only had to service a population of 6,000 people, but by the 1970s, the population had grown to about 200,000. This meant more bus stops and more bus routes. Gough Whitlam was Prime Minister, and he wanted to decentralise major cities to reduce overcrowding and traffic congestion. Canberra became his experiment, with major investment in schools, infrastructure and public transport. Satellite suburbs like Woden and Belconnen got a major boost, and the Australian Capital Territory Internal Omnibus Network, or ACTION, was part of the plan. To design the new bus shelters, the National Capital Development Commission hired Clem Cummings. Cummings was born in Cairns in 1934. In 1953, he moved to Canberra to study at the Royal Military College at Duntroon. He graduated in 1955 and resigned his commission 2 years later. In 1962, he graduated from the University of Sydney with honours in architecture. Returning to Canberra to work at the Department of Works, he eventually assisted the Prime Minister's office in 1968 as an advisor on several office refurbishment projects. He left the public service in 1971 to briefly work for the private architectural firm Dirk Bolt Architects and Town Planners, before setting up his own practice, C.G. Cummings and Associates, the same year. Before working with the NCDC, Cummings had worked with the National Trust, the AST Heritage Committee and the New South Wales Heritage Council. As a matter of principle, his firm didn't nominate for awards. However, he did win the Housing Industry Award in 1978 for a house in Garran. However, this isn't his most iconic work. Cummings spent 3 years coming up with a design that would meet the standards set by the NCDC. In 1975, they cost $2,300 each to produce. But in today's money, that's equivalent to almost $17,000. Made from concrete and fiberglass, they're reflective of the brutalist architectural style. The Department of Capital Territories installed 98 of them around Canberra in May 1975. However, by 1976, the price had risen to $2,800 per shelter. At one stage, the Departmental Coordinating Committee believed that the cost was just too high and wanted to reduce it down to $1,000. In response, the Transport Branch Assistant Secretary predicted that it would be a steel frame with a tin covering and would leave it as fair game for the vandals of the city. Though functional and generally well received, the Department of Construction wanted a modified design. And in December 1976, 52 Series 2 bus shelters were installed, adding a precast floor, removing the backrest from all shelters and the seats from shelters near schools. This dropped the price to around $2,000. The original plans were thought lost until 2016, when the Territory Municipal Services record manager discovered a complete set at the Tuggeranong Action Depot. Over the next 3 years, the Transport branch installed another 155 shelters, making Series 3 through to Series 5. Installations became less common by the 80s and 90s. Today the shelters are windowless, but originally they had panes made out of a polycarbonate called Lexan. Sadly though, vandals would often push them through or burn them. The practice was so common that it became too expensive to replace them. The Transport branch even tried an alternative, stronger polycarbonate, Lexan 4000, but it too failed to stop the vandals. At one point they even tried to use wired glass, but abandoned the idea after glaziers warned them of how dangerous it would be if they shattered. In 1982, bus driver Brian Cousins had grown tired of the beige shelters, so he pitched the idea to have them decorated with art by local organisations and schools. Action Management agreed to this idea in the hopes that it would reduce graffiti, with the first shelters near Canberra and enlighten High being painted by the students. Unfortunately, the artwork has long been painted over and lost to the sands of time, so if you have any photos or records of these paintings, please let me know. By 1987, Action expanded the program into a competition. At the launch, the member of Canberra, Ros Kelly, the first federal MP to give birth while in office, said it was an innovative way to promote civic pride among students and members of the community. Monotone Paints sponsored the event, supplying paints and brushes as well as a $1,000 cash prize. Action also offered $330 worth of bus hire. If you want to see some of the designs, I have a link to the ACT archives in the description below. Unfortunately, in 1993, the competition came to an end as Monotone was taken over by Amazing Paints. In the past few years, the shelters have had a bit of a resurgence. No longer a canvas, the shelters themselves are now inspiring art. The artist most associated with bus shelter art is Newcastle artist Trevor Dickinson. While in Canberra for work in 2012, he saw one of the shelters across from his studio and he drew it. Over 8 years, he drew several artworks, photographed them all, and had an exhibition at the Canberra Museum and Art Gallery, and published a book featuring his art and the history of the shelters. In May 2019, he painted his first mural in Canberra on the side of the Bavarian in Woden.
This is not the only piece of shelter art in Woden, with the Silver Sprayers creating this artwork in December 2018 as part of the Streetwise project. It was created by Canberrans over the age of 55 with the aim of changing perceptions around mature Australians and street art. Due to their durability, some shelters are relocated to more suitable locations, with 11 finding new homes in January 2021. At the same time, solar panels and lighting were added to a couple of shelters in Mitchell to improve their safety at night. Though very common in Canberra, the bus shelter has been spotted around the country, in Maitland, Burrardoo Station, and at one point as a set of public toilets in Surfers Paradise. The shelters have become so popular they even have their own merchandise, including socks.
The Canberra Bus Shelter is so ubiquitous it's not going to be heritage listed anytime soon, but fortunately it has reached iconic status. If you've enjoyed this video, feel free to like, comment and share, and if you want to see more, hit that subscribe button.